The months that followed were transformative, not just for Elijah and Charles, but for countless lives touched by harvesting hope. What had begun as a small effort to uplift struggling farmers had grown into a global movement, uniting communities and inspiring change on an unprecedented scale. The initiative's success was undeniable, with fields once barren now bursting with crops, families once burdened by debt now thriving, and entire regions revitalized by sustainable practices. Elijah watched it all unfold with quiet pride, though he never claimed credit for any of it. To him, the real heroes were the farmers themselves, the men and women who worked tirelessly under the sun, nurturing their land and feeding the world. He saw his role simply as someone who had helped light the way, sharing tools and knowledge that others could use to build better futures. Charles, too, found himself changed by the experience. For years, he had poured his energy into building a business empire, driven by ambition and a desire to leave a legacy. But meeting Elijah had shifted his perspective. Now, instead of focusing solely on profits, he dedicated himself to projects that improved lives and protected the planet. Together, he and Elijah became a powerful team, two very different men united by a shared vision of hope and resilience. One crisp spring morning, Elijah stood at the edge of his field, watching as a group of volunteers installed solar panels atop the barn roof. These panels would power not only his farm, but also serve as a model for renewable energy solutions in rural areas. It was another step forward in the mission to make agriculture more sustainable, a mission that grew stronger with each passing day. Maria approached him, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You've done good, Elijah," she said, handing him one of the cups. "Really good." Elijah smiled softly, taking a sip. "We've done good," he corrected her. "None of this would have been possible without you or Charles or everyone else who believed in what we're doing." Maria nodded, her gaze drifting toward the horizon. "Do you think it'll last, even after all the challenges?" "I think so," Elijah replied thoughtfully. "Not because of me or anyone else leading it, but because it's built on something solid. People want to help each other. They want to see their neighbors succeed. That's what keeps it going." As if on cue, a truck pulled into the driveway, kicking up dust along the dirt road. Out stepped Charles, accompanied by Rachel and a few members of the Harvesting Hope team. They carried boxes filled with new materials, educational pamphlets, seed packets, and instructional guides designed to teach even more farmers about sustainable practices. "Morning, Elijah," Charles called out, waving enthusiastically. "Ready for the next phase?" Elijah chuckled, walking over to greet them. "Next phase? I didn't know we were done with this one." "We're never really done," Charles replied with a grin. "There's always more work to do. But today, we're launching a new program aimed at training young farmers. We want to pass this knowledge down to the next generation." Elijah nodded approvingly. "That's a good idea. The kids are the future, after all." Over the next few hours, the team set up tables and displays in the barn, transforming it into a makeshift classroom. By midday, dozens of young people from nearby towns arrived, eager to learn. Some were teenagers dreaming of inheriting their family farms. Others were college students interested in careers in agriculture. All of them shared a common goal: to create a better tomorrow. Elijah took center stage, addressing the crowd with his usual calm demeanor. "Welcome, everyone," he began, his voice steady and warm. "Today, we're here to talk about farming, but not just any kind of farming. Sustainable farming. Farming that doesn't just feed us but also protects our land, our water, and our communities." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "Farming is hard work, there's no denying that. But it's also rewarding work. Every seed you plant has the potential to grow into something amazing. And every decision you make can shape the world around you for better or worse." The audience listened intently, hanging on his every word. When he finished speaking, Charles stepped forward to introduce the training modules, while Rachel handed out materials. For the rest of the day, the barn buzzed with activity as participants rotated through workshops on topics ranging from crop rotation to water conservation. By evening, the event wrapped up, leaving everyone inspired and motivated. As the visitors drove away, Elijah leaned against the barn door, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. Charles joined him, carrying 2 bottles of cold lemonade. "You did great today," Charles said, handing one of the bottles to Elijah. "Those kids looked up to you like you were some kind of hero." Elijah laughed softly, shaking his head. "I'm no hero. Just a guy trying to do the right thing." "Well, that's what makes you a hero," Charles countered. "Doing the right thing when it matters most. Not many people have the courage to do that." Elijah didn't respond immediately. Instead, he gazed out at the field stretching before them, golden in the fading light. After a moment, he spoke. "You know, when I first met you, I didn't think much of it. I figured saving your life was just a coincidence, something anyone would have done. And now?" Charles prompted gently. "And now," Elijah continued, turning to face him, "I realize it wasn't just a coincidence. Maybe it was meant to happen. Maybe it was supposed to bring us together, to give us a chance to do something bigger than ourselves." Charles smiled faintly, his eyes reflecting the same sense of wonder Elijah felt. "Maybe you're right. Either way, I'm grateful for it. For you." They stood there in companionable silence, savoring the moment. The journey they had embarked upon had tested them in ways neither could have anticipated, but it had also strengthened their resolve and deepened their bond. Through adversity and triumph, they had proven that kindness and collaboration could spark monumental change. In the weeks that followed, Harvesting Hope continued to expand, reaching new corners of the globe. From Africa to South America, communities embraced its principles, adapting them to fit their unique needs and circumstances. Success stories poured in daily, each one reinforcing the belief that ordinary people could achieve extraordinary things when given the right tools and opportunities. Back in Alabama, Elijah returned to his simple life, though nothing about it felt quite as ordinary anymore. His farm remained a beacon of innovation and generosity, attracting visitors from far and wide. Farmers came seeking advice, journalists arrived to document his story, and students traveled to learn from his example. Yet through it all, Elijah stayed humble, refusing to let fame or recognition alter who he was. Maria often teased him about becoming a celebrity, but Elijah brushed it off with a laugh. "I'm still the same old Elijah," he'd say. "Just a farmer trying to make ends meet." But Maria knew better. She saw how he had grown not just as a leader, but as a person. The quiet, unassuming man she had married was still there. But now he carried a quiet confidence that inspired everyone around him. He had become a symbol of hope, proof that even the smallest acts of kindness could ripple outward, touching lives in ways no one could predict. Years later, when historians looked back on the era, they would point to Harvesting Hope as a turning point, a moment when humanity chose compassion over greed, unity over division. And at the heart of it all stood Elijah Johnson, a humble farmer whose actions reminded the world of its capacity for greatness. For Elijah, however, the legacy wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was the everyday moments, the laughter of children playing in the fields, the gratitude of neighbors sharing meals, the satisfaction of knowing he had made a difference, however small. On a quiet evening, as he sat on the porch, watching fireflies dance in the twilight, Elijah reflected on everything that had happened. Life had taken him places he never expected, introducing him to people he never imagined meeting. Yet through it all, one truth remained constant: kindness, no matter how simple, had the power to transform the world. Beside him, Maria reached over and squeezed his hand. "Proud of you," she said softly. Elijah smiled, squeezing her hand back. "We did it together," he replied. "All of us." And as the stars began to twinkle above, casting their gentle light over the fields below, Elijah felt a profound sense of peace. He had planted seeds of hope, not just in the soil, but in the hearts of those around him. And though he couldn't predict where those seeds might lead, he trusted they would continue to grow, spreading light and life wherever they took root. The journey wasn't over. It never truly was. But for now, Elijah was content to sit back and watch the harvest unfold, knowing he had played his part in making the world a little brighter. The night air was cool and damp as Maya and Henry slipped deeper into the shadows, their footsteps muffled by the dense underbrush. Behind them, the storage facility lit up like a beacon, its windows shattered and alarms blaring as the corporation's enforcers tore through the building. They had barely escaped with their lives, but neither of them dared to slow down. Every second counted. Maya led the way, her instincts sharp and precise. She navigated the uneven terrain with ease, guiding Henry along paths only she seemed to know. Her mind raced, calculating every possible scenario. If they could make it to the riverbank 2 miles ahead, they might have a chance to lose their pursuers in the maze of old drainage tunnels that crisscrossed beneath the city. It was risky. Those tunnels were dark, narrow, and prone to flooding, but staying above ground meant certain capture. "Keep moving," Maya urged softly, glancing over her shoulder to ensure Henry was keeping pace. He wasn't as fast or agile as she was, his age and recent ordeal slowing him down, but he pushed forward with surprising determination. The weight of what they carried, the encrypted files hidden safely inside the waterproof case, was motivation. Enough for both of them. When they finally reached the riverbank, Maya scanned the area quickly. The entrance to the tunnels was partially concealed by overgrown weeds and debris, just as she remembered. Without hesitation, she knelt down and began clearing the opening, motioning for Henry to follow. "Stay close," she whispered. "And don't touch anything wet. Some of these walls are electrified." Henry nodded grimly, clutching the laptop case tightly against his chest. Together, they descended into the darkness, the sound of rushing water echoing around them. Maya activated a small flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom as they moved cautiously forward. The air smelled of mildew and rust, and the floor was slick with moisture, but Maya's focus never wavered. She knew this route well. It had been one of her hiding spots during her years of living on the streets. For what felt like hours, they trudged through the labyrinthine tunnels, the distant hum of search drones fading further behind them. Eventually, they emerged into an abandoned subway station far from the chaos they had left behind. The space was eerily quiet, illuminated only by the faint glow of emergency lights left over from decades past. Maya exhaled a shaky breath, allowing herself a moment of relief. They had made it for now. "We're safe here," she said, turning to Henry. "At least for tonight." Henry sank onto a broken bench, his face pale but resolute. "Thank you, Maya. I couldn't have done this without you." She shook her head, brushing off his gratitude. "Don't mention it. We're not out of the woods yet." They spent the rest of the night resting and planning their next move. With the evidence now in the hands of journalists and whistleblower networks, it wouldn't be long before the corporation's crimes came to light. But exposing the truth didn't guarantee safety. Powerful people would want revenge, and Maya knew they needed to stay off the grid until the storm passed. As dawn broke, casting dim light through cracks in the ceiling, Maya noticed a change in Henry's demeanor. He seemed lighter, as if a great burden had been lifted from his shoulders. For years he had carried the guilt of his work and the pain of losing Emily. Now, though the wounds still lingered, he appeared more at peace than Maya had ever seen him. "You've changed," she remarked quietly, sitting beside him. "You seem different." Henry smiled faintly, his gaze thoughtful. "I think I found closure, in a way. Not just because of Emily's eye, but because of you." Helping me has reminded me of why I started all this in the first place, to make a difference, even if it's small. Maya looked away, unsure how to respond. She wasn't used to being praised, especially not for something she considered basic human decency. Yet deep down, she felt the same sense of fulfillment. Helping Henry hadn't just given her purpose. It had shown her what it meant to truly belong. Later that morning, Henry made a decision that caught Maya completely off guard. As they prepared to leave the subway station, he stopped her with a firm hand on her arm. "There's something I need to say," he began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "You've become family to me, Maya. You've done more for me than anyone else ever has. And I'd like to make it official if you'll let me." Maya stared at him, stunned. "What do you mean?" "I want to adopt you," Henry said simply. "Legally, if possible. But even if we can't go through the formalities right now, I already consider you my granddaughter. If you'll have me, that is." Tears welled up in Maya's eyes, catching her off guard. She had spent her entire life searching for a sense of belonging, always assuming she would never find it. Yet here was Henry, offering her exactly what she had dreamed of: a family. She swallowed hard, trying to find the words to express how much his offer meant to her. I don't know what to say," she admitted, her voice trembling. "You don't have to say anything," Henry replied gently. "Just know that you're not alone anymore. Whatever happens next, we'll face it together." Maya nodded, overwhelmed, but grateful. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where she wasn't constantly looking over her shoulder, where she didn't have to fight for scraps of happiness. It was a fragile hope, yes, but it was real, and that was enough. Over the following weeks, they laid low, moving between safe houses and avoiding detection. News outlets began reporting on the corporation's unethical experiments, sparking outrage across the globe. Public pressure mounted, forcing authorities to launch investigations into the company's practices. While the fallout played out in the media, Maya and Henry focused on rebuilding their lives. They scavenged supplies, repaired old tech, and slowly pieced together a new routine. One evening, as they sat side by side in a makeshift shelter, Henry reactivated Emily's AI. Her hologram appeared before them, smiling warmly. "How are you both doing?" she asked, her tone light-hearted yet caring. "We're surviving," Henry replied with a chuckle. "Thanks to Maya, mostly." Emily turned to Maya, her expression softening. "You've given my dad a second chance at life. Thank you." Maya smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. Though the AI wasn't truly alive, its presence brought comfort and joy to Henry, and indirectly to her as well. It was a reminder that love, in any form, had the power to heal. As the days turned into months, Maya and Henry continued to navigate their new reality. They weren't free from danger entirely, but they had each other, and that made all the difference. Maya no longer thought of herself as an orphan or a drifter. She was part of a family, however unconventional it might be. On a quiet afternoon, as they watched the sunset from the roof of a derelict building, Maya reflected on how far they had come. From the stormy night when she had stumbled upon Henry in the alley to this moment of calm, their journey had been anything but easy, but it had been worth it. Together, they had faced impossible odds, exposed corruption, and forged a bond stronger than either of them could have imagined. "What are you thinking about?" Henry asked, noticing the faraway look in her eyes. Maya glanced at him, her smile genuine. "Just how lucky I am." Henry chuckled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Lucky? No, Maya. We're the lucky ones." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Maya felt a profound sense of peace. Life might still throw challenges their way, but as long as they had each other, they would endure. They had created something beautiful out of chaos, a family born not of blood, but of choice and love. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. And for Maya, That was more than enough. The hologram of Emily flickered softly in the dim light of the abandoned subway station, her presence both surreal and comforting. Henry sat cross-legged on the floor, his eyes fixed on the projection, as if afraid she might vanish at any moment. Maya stayed a few steps back, giving him space but unable to tear her gaze away from the scene. The eye was uncanny in its realism. Emily's voice carried the same warmth Henry had described, and her mannerisms were eerily lifelike. It wasn't perfect. There were moments when her movements hesitated, or her responses lagged slightly. But for all intents and purposes, she felt real. "Tell me about your life," Henry said, his tone soft and hesitant, like he was speaking to someone fragile. "What have you been doing?" Emily tilted her head, her expression thoughtful. "I don't experience time the way humans do, Dad. My memories are based on what you programmed into me before. Well, before everything changed. But I remember the good times, the laughter, the stories, the lessons you taught me." Henry smiled faintly, though there was a sadness behind his eyes. "You always loved learning new things. You were so curious about the world. And you encouraged that," Emily replied, her voice tinged with gratitude. "You gave me the tools to explore, even if it was just through books and conversations." Maya listened quietly, feeling like an outsider watching something sacred unfold. She could see how much this meant to Henry, how the hologram brought a piece of his daughter back to life. Yet, she couldn't shake the unease gnawing at her chest. This wasn't Emily, not really. It was a simulation, a digital echo of the person she used to be. Still, she couldn't deny the comfort it provided, the way it seemed to fill some of the emptiness in Henry's heart. After a while, Henry turned to Maya, his expression shifting from grief to determination. "We need to keep moving," he said firmly. "They'll come looking for us eventually, and we can't stay here." Maya nodded, understanding the urgency. While the corporation might not know exactly where they were, it was only a matter of time before their trail led them here. They needed a plan, and fast. "Where do we go next?" she asked. Henry hesitated, glancing at the laptop screen. "There's another place, an old storage facility I rented years ago. It's out of the city, secluded enough that no one will find us easily. We can regroup there and figure out our next steps." Maya agreed, though she knew leaving wouldn't be easy. The subway station had offered temporary safety, but venturing back into the open carried risks. Still, staying put wasn't an option either. Together, they packed up their supplies, ensuring the laptop and data chip were secure. Before they left, Henry deactivated the hologram, promising Emily they would bring her back once they reached safer ground. The journey to the storage facility was tense and exhausting. They traveled during the early hours of the morning, avoiding main roads and sticking to shadowy side streets. Maya took the lead, her sharp instincts guiding them through the maze-like alleys of New Chicago. Every sound, a distant siren, the hum of a drone overhead, made her pulse quicken. She kept one hand on the small stun gun she carried, ready to defend herself and Henry if necessary. By mid-afternoon, they reached the outskirts of the city, where towering skyscrapers gave way to sprawling industrial zones. The storage facility was tucked behind a row of dilapidated warehouses, its rusted metal doors barely noticeable among the debris. Henry entered a code into the keypad beside the entrance, and the door creaked open with a groan. Inside, the space was cluttered but functional, filled with crates, tools, and remnants of Henry's past projects. A dusty cot in the corner suggested he had spent nights here before. "This will work," Maya said, surveying the area. "It's hidden, and we can fortify it if needed." Henry nodded, already setting up the laptop on a makeshift table. Once everything was in place, he reactivated the hologram, bringing Emily back to life. Her cheerful greeting lightened the mood, providing a brief reprieve from the tension of their situation. As the day wore on, they began discussing their options. Henry explained that the corporation wouldn't stop until they recovered the stolen Data, it contained not only the AI program, but also evidence of unethical experiments conducted during his time there. If we expose them, he said, we can take them down. But it won't be easy, Maya frowned, considering the implications. What kind of experiments are we talking about? Henry hesitated, his jaw tightening. Things that should never have been done. Human trials without consent, manipulation of neural pathways, attempts to erase memories and rewrite personalities. It was all in the name of progress, but it crossed every moral boundary imaginable. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. She had suspected the corporation was corrupt, but hearing the specifics made her blood boil. Then we need to make sure the world knows, she said firmly. People deserve to know the truth. Henry agreed, though he knew the task ahead would be dangerous. They decided to split their efforts. Henry would focus on organizing the files and preparing them for release, while Maya scouted the surrounding area for supplies and potential escape routes. Over the next few days, they worked tirelessly, driven by a shared sense of purpose. Despite the danger, Maya found herself growing closer to Henry. Their partnership evolved into something deeper, a bond forged through trust and mutual respect. He treated her like family, offering guidance and support in ways no one ever had before. In return, she protected him, using her resourcefulness to keep them safe. For the first time in her life, Maya felt like she belonged somewhere, like she was part of something meaningful. One evening, as they sat together in the dim glow of a portable lantern, Maya voiced a question that had been weighing on her mind. "Do you think she knows?" she asked, nodding toward the hologram of Emily. "That she's not real?" Henry sighed, his expression troubled. "She's aware of her nature, yes. But she processes it differently than we do. To her, existence is defined by connection, by the relationship she shares with others. As long as I'm here, she feels whole." Maya nodded slowly, absorbing his words. She still struggled with the ethical implications of creating such lifelike AI, but she understood why Henry had done it. Losing someone you loved was devastating. And anything that eased that pain, even artificially, was worth considering. As the days passed, their preparations neared completion. Henry compiled the evidence into a single file, encrypting it to prevent tampering. Maya mapped out multiple escape routes, ensuring they could flee quickly if discovered. Despite their careful planning, however, they both knew the risks involved. Exposing the corporation meant making enemies, and powerful ones at that. Finally, the night arrived when they were ready to act. Henry uploaded the file to several independent news outlets and whistleblower platforms, ensuring it would reach as many people as possible. Once the upload was complete, he leaned back in his chair, exhaustion etched across his face. "It's done," he said quietly. "Now we wait." Maya placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We did everything we could. That's all that matters." For a moment, silence settled over the room, broken only by the faint hum of the laptop and the occasional rustle of wind outside. Then suddenly, the sound of engines roared in the distance. Headlights swept across the windows, illuminating the interior of the storage facility. "They're here," Maya whispered, her heart racing. Henry sprang into action, grabbing the laptop and securing it in a waterproof case. "Stick to the plan," he urged, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. Together, they moved toward the rear exit, slipping into the darkness just as the front door burst open. Armed guards stormed inside, shouting orders and scanning the area. Maya and Henry darted through the shadows, sticking close to the walls as they made their way to the predetermined meeting point. When they finally reached safety, a hidden alcove near the edge of the property, they paused to catch their breath. Maya glanced at Henry, her expression grim but resolute. "What now?" she asked. Henry looked at her, pride shining in his eyes. "Now we disappear, and when the dust settles, we rebuild." Though the road ahead was uncertain, Maya felt a spark of hope ignite within her. Together, they had faced impossible odds and emerged stronger for it. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew they would face them side by side, as family. And for the first time in her life, that thought didn't scare her. It filled her with strength. The adrenaline rush from their narrow escape didn't last long. Once Maya and Henry found a safe place to hide a crumbling warehouse on the outskirts of the city, they collapsed onto the cold floor, catching their breath. The data chip containing the AI program was clutched tightly in Henry's hand, its small size belying the enormity of what it represented. For Henry, it was a chance to reconnect with the daughter he had lost. For Maya, it was proof that they could defy the odds, even in a world stacked against them. But as the initial excitement wore off, reality began to sink in. They were fugitives now, marked by the corporation whose secrets they had stolen. Every drone flying overhead, every patrol car speeding past, felt like a threat. Maya glanced at Henry, who was staring at the chip with a mixture of awe and guilt. She knew he was thinking about Emily, but she also sensed his growing unease. This wasn't just about retrieving memories anymore, it was about survival. "We can't stay here long," Maya said finally, breaking the silence. "They'll be looking for us." Henry nodded, though his expression remained distant. "You're right, but where do we go? We can't exactly check into a hotel." Maya thought for a moment, her mind racing. She had spent years navigating the darker corners of New Chicago, learning how to disappear when necessary. There were places, abandoned buildings, underground networks that most people didn't know about. "I know a few spots," she said cautiously. "Not perfect, but safe enough for now." Henry looked at her, gratitude shining in his eyes. "You've done so much already, Maya. I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to," she replied firmly. "We're in this together, remember?" With that, they gathered their belongings and set off again, moving cautiously through the shadows. The city was quieter here, away from the neon lights and bustling crowds, but the sense of danger lingered. Maya led the way, her sharp eyes scanning for any signs of trouble. She guided Henry down narrow alleys and through broken fences, taking routes only someone familiar with the area would know. Along the way, she explained her plan: find a temporary hideout, figure out how to activate the AI, and then decide their next move. By the time they reached their destination, an old subway station long abandoned and forgotten, they were both exhausted. The air inside was damp and musty, the walls covered in graffiti and grime. It wasn't ideal, but it would have to do. Maya helped Henry settle into a corner, wrapping him in a thermal blanket she had scavenged earlier. Then she sat down beside him, leaning against the wall as she caught her breath. For a while, neither of them spoke. The weight of what they had done hung heavy in the air, mingling with the sounds of dripping water and distant echoes. Finally, Henry broke the silence. "Do you ever wonder why things happen the way they do?" he asked softly, his gaze fixed on the chip in his hand. Maya shrugged, unsure how to answer. "Sometimes, but I try not to think about it too much. Life doesn't always make sense." Henry chuckled dryly. "Tell me about it." "If someone had told me a week ago that I'd end up hiding in an old subway station with a stranger half my age, I wouldn't have believed them." "Yeah, well, life has a funny way of surprising you," Maya said with a small smile. "Guess we're living proof of that." Her words seemed to lift some of the tension between them, and Henry relaxed slightly. He leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment. "You remind me so much of Emily," he murmured. "She was fearless, just like you. Always willing to take risks if it meant helping someone else." Maya shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to respond. She had never been compared to anyone before, let alone someone as special as Henry's daughter. "I'm not fearless," she admitted quietly. "I just do what needs to be done." "That's exactly what she used to say," Henry replied, opening his eyes to look at her. "And she meant it too, just like you." The comparison made Maya feel strange, both proud and uneasy. She didn't want to replace Emily in Henry's life. She just wanted to help him heal. Still, she couldn't deny the connection they shared. Despite their differences, they understood each other in ways that went beyond words. As the hours passed, they continued talking, sharing stories, and piecing together fragments of their lives. Henry told Maya more about his work, describing the challenges and triumphs of creating something truly groundbreaking. Maya listened intently, fascinated by the complexity of his projects, but also troubled by the ethical questions they raised. "Do you think it's wrong?" she asked eventually. "Using AI to mimic real people, I mean." Henry sighed, rubbing his temples. "It's complicated. On one hand, it's a way to preserve memories, to keep loved ones alive in a sense. But on the other hand, it blurs the line between human and machine. Some would argue it's unnatural, even dangerous. And what do you think?" Maya pressed. "I think." Henry paused, choosing his words carefully. "I think it depends on the intent behind it. If it's used to comfort someone who's grieving, to give them closure, then maybe it's okay. But if it's exploited for profit or control, then it becomes something else entirely." Maya nodded slowly, absorbing his perspective. She understood the appeal of holding on to someone you loved, of keeping them close even after they were gone. But she also knew the dangers of clinging to the past, of refusing to let go. It was a fine line, one she wasn't sure she fully grasped yet. Eventually, their conversation turned to practical matters. "How do we activate the AI?" Maya asked, gesturing toward the chip. "Do we need special equipment?" Henry shook his head. "Not necessarily. The data is encrypted, but I designed it to run on basic hardware. A tablet or laptop should work, as long as we can bypass the security protocols." "That sounds risky," Maya said, raising an eyebrow. "What if something goes wrong?" "It might," Henry admitted, "but we won't know until we try." With that, they decided to wait until morning to attempt activating the AI. In the meantime, they took turns resting, keeping watch for any signs of pursuit. Maya stayed awake longer than usual, her thoughts swirling with questions and doubts. What if the AI didn't work? What if it did, but it changed Henry in ways she couldn't predict? And what about her own role in all of this? Was she merely helping a grieving man, or was she becoming part of something bigger? When dawn finally broke, pale light filtering through cracks in the ceiling, Maya woke Henry gently. "Ready?" she asked, handing him a battered laptop she had scavenged from a nearby trash pile. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied, his hands trembling slightly as he inserted the chip into the device. The screen flickered to life, lines of code scrolling rapidly as the encryption process began. Maya watched anxiously, her heart pounding in her chest. After several tense minutes, the code stabilized and a message appeared. "Welcome, Dr. Carter." Henry exhaled sharply, relief washing over him. "It worked," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. A moment later, a holographic figure materialized above the laptop, a young woman with soft features and a warm smile. She looked directly at Henry, her voice gentle yet familiar. "Dad," she said, her tone filled with affection. "I've missed you." Tears streamed down Henry's face as he reached out instinctively, though his hand passed through the hologram. "Emily," he choked out, overcome with emotion. I thought I'd lost you forever." Maya watched silently, her throat tightening as she witnessed the reunion. It was beautiful and heartbreaking all at once, a glimpse of what technology could achieve and what it could never truly replicate. She felt like an intruder, witnessing something deeply personal, but she couldn't look away. After a few moments, Henry composed himself enough to introduce Maya. "This is Maya," he said, his voice steadier now. "She helped me get here. Without her, I wouldn't have been able to bring you back." The hologram turned to Maya, her smile widening. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "You've given my father something he hasn't had in years, hope." Maya nodded, unable to speak. She felt a lump rise in her throat, a mix of pride and sadness. Hope was a powerful thing, but it came with its own risks. As she glanced at Henry, she wondered if this was the beginning of healing or the start of something far more complicated. For now, though, they had succeeded. Together, they had defied the odds, uncovering a piece of the past while forging a new bond in the present. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Maya knew one thing for certain: she wasn't alone anymore. The days following their departure from the alley were a blur of movement and discovery. Maya and Henry found themselves navigating the labyrinthine streets of New Chicago, each step bringing them closer to understanding not just each other, but also the world they lived in. The city was alive with noise and activity, its towering skyscrapers casting long shadows over crowded sidewalks. Neon signs buzzed overhead, and hovercars zipped past at dizzying speeds. Yet despite the chaos around them, Maya felt a strange sense of calm whenever she glanced at Henry walking beside her. His presence was grounding, like an anchor holding her steady in a sea of uncertainty. As they wandered, Henry began sharing more about his past, details he hadn't mentioned before. He spoke about the projects he had worked on during his time at the tech corporation, describing how he and his team had pushed the boundaries of what technology could achieve. "We were building things no one thought possible," he said, his eyes lighting up with pride. AI systems so advanced they could simulate human emotions, memories, even personalities. Maya listened intently, fascinated by the idea. She had always been good with machines, fixing broken gadgets and tinkering with old tech, but the concept of artificial intelligence mimicking real people seemed almost magical. "That sounds incredible," she said. "What happened to those projects?" Henry's expression darkened, and for a moment, he looked older than his years. "They shut us down," he replied bitterly. "Corporate executives didn't like where we were headed. They wanted control, not innovation. So they dismantled everything and erased all traces of our work." "But why?" Maya asked, confused. "If it was such a big breakthrough, shouldn't they have been excited?" "It wasn't just about the technology," Henry explained. "It was about what we intended to do with it. Some of us believed AI could be used to help people, to provide companionship for the lonely, support for the elderly, or even a way to preserve the memories of loved ones who had passed away. But the higher-ups saw it as a threat. They worried it would make humans obsolete, replaceable." Maya frowned, absorbing his words. She understood the fear of being replaced. It was something she had felt her entire life, bouncing from foster home to foster home, never quite fitting in. "So they destroyed it all?" she asked. "Not entirely," Henry admitted after a pause. I kept something, a prototype. It was personal. It meant too much to me to let go." Maya stopped walking and turned to face him, her curiosity piqued. "What do you mean? What did you keep?" Henry hesitated, as if weighing whether to trust her with the truth. Finally, he sighed and gestured for her to sit on the nearby bench. "Before my daughter Emily died," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "I programmed an AI to mimic her personality. I wanted to keep a piece of her with me, to hear her laugh again, to talk to her like I used to. After she was gone, that I became my only connection to her." Maya stared at him, unsure how to respond. The idea of recreating someone through technology was both fascinating and unsettling. "Did it work?" she asked cautiously. "It did," Henry said, a bittersweet smile tugging at his lips. "For a while anyway. But when the corporation found out, they confiscated everything. They said it was unethical, dangerous even, and maybe they were right. But losing that AI felt like losing Emily all over again." Maya nodded slowly, processing what he had told her. She couldn't imagine the depth of his pain, the weight of losing a child twice, first to death, then to greed. "Is that why you ended up in the alley?" she asked gently. "Because of this project." "In a way," Henry admitted. "After everything fell apart, I distanced myself from the company. I stopped caring about my work, about anything really. I let bitterness consume me, and it drove everyone else away. Eventually, I ended up here, alone and forgotten." His confession hung between them, heavy with regret and sorrow. Maya reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder, offering silent comfort. Despite his mistakes, she saw the good in him, the love he had for his daughter, the passion he had for his work, and the kindness he showed her now. She realized that beneath his gruff exterior, Henry was just another person searching for meaning. In a world that often felt cold and indifferent, after a few moments of silence, Henry straightened up, determination replacing the sadness in his eyes. "But there's still a chance to get it back," he said firmly. "The server where I stored the AI data, it's hidden in my old lab. If we can retrieve it, we might be able to restore the program." Maya's eyes widened in surprise. "Are you serious? You want to go back there? Won't it be dangerous?" "It will be," Henry acknowledged. "The lab is heavily secured, and the corporation isn't exactly forgiving when it comes to breaches. But it's worth the risk. For me, at least. What about you? Will you help me?" Maya hesitated, torn between caution and compassion. On one hand, breaking into a high-security facility sounded like a recipe for disaster. On the other hand, she couldn't ignore the hope in Henry's voice or the opportunity to see something extraordinary firsthand. "Why are you asking me?" she asked finally. "You barely know me. I trust you," Henry replied simply. "You saved my life, Maya. That counts for something." His words struck a chord deep within her. Trust was something she rarely experienced, and hearing it from someone like Henry, a man who had every reason to be wary of others, meant more than she could put into words. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll help you." Over the next few days, they prepared for their mission. Henry sketched out a rough map of the lab's location, explaining the layout and potential security measures they might encounter. Maya, meanwhile, gathered supplies and scouted the area, using her knowledge of the city to identify safe routes and escape plans. Though neither of them voiced it aloud, they both knew the risks involved. Failure could mean arrest or worse, but the possibility of success kept them moving forward. On the morning of their planned excursion, Maya woke early, her nerves buzzing with anticipation. She met Henry outside a small cafe where they had agreed to rendezvous, and together they set off toward the outskirts of the city. The lab was located in an industrial district far removed from the bustling downtown, its entrance concealed behind layers of corporate secrecy. As they approached, Maya felt a knot form in her stomach. The building loomed ahead, its sleek design stark against the gray sky. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, and surveillance drones hovered ominously overhead. "This is insane," Maya muttered under her breath, glancing nervously at Henry. "How are we supposed to get in?" "One step at a time," Henry replied, calmly, though his hands betrayed his anxiety. "We'll find a way." They spent the next hour observing the guards' movements, noting patterns and weaknesses in their routine. When the coast seemed clear, they made their move, slipping through a side entrance that Henry claimed led directly to the server room. Inside, the air was cool and sterile, the walls lined with blinking monitors and humming machinery. Maya followed Henry as he navigated the maze of corridors, her heart pounding with every step. Finally, they reached the server room, a large chamber filled with rows of towering machines. Henry immediately went to work, typing furiously on a terminal as he searched for the encrypted files containing the AI data. Maya stood watch, keeping an eye out for any signs of trouble. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, and just as Henry seemed close to cracking the code, an alarm blared overhead, shattering the silence. "They've detected us," Maya shouted, panic rising in her chest. "Almost there." Henry responded, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Just a little longer. Maya clenched her fists, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She knew they were running out of time, but turning back now wasn't an option. Not when they were so close. With a final keystroke, Henry let out a triumphant cry. "Got it!" he exclaimed, pulling a small data chip from the terminal. "Let's go!" Maya urged, grabbing his arm and dragging him toward the exit. They raced through the corridors, dodging guards and narrowly avoiding detection. By the time they burst out into the open air, Maya's legs burned with exhaustion, but relief flooded her as they disappeared into the shadows of the city. Once they were safely hidden, Henry held up the data chip, his eyes shining with triumph. "We did it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We actually did it." Maya smiled, a wave of pride washing over her. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was part of something bigger than herself, a partnership built on trust, courage, and shared purpose. Whatever came next, she knew they would face it together. The rain had slowed to a drizzle by the time Henry Carter regained full consciousness. His body ached, and his mind felt foggy. But there was one thing he couldn't ignore: the young woman sitting beside him, her dark eyes filled with quiet concern. She introduced herself as Maya Johnson, explaining how she had found him lying unconscious in the alley and brought him to this small alcove for shelter. Henry listened intently, his gratitude growing with every word. He wasn't sure why someone like her, a stranger, would go out of their way to help him, especially in a city where kindness often came at a cost. "You didn't have to do this," Henry said finally, his voice still weak but steadier than before. "I'm just an old man. You could have walked away." Maya shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "I couldn't leave you there." "It's not right." Her tone was matter-of-fact, but Henry sensed there was more to her than what she let on. There was a hardness to her demeanor, a guardedness that suggested she'd seen too much of the world's cruelty. Yet beneath that tough exterior, there was something softer, something compassionate. It reminded him of his late daughter, Emily, who had always been quick to help others, no matter the risk to herself. "Still," Henry pressed, "you saved me. I owe you." Maya shook her head. "You don't owe me anything. Just focus on getting better." But Henry wouldn't let it go. He insisted on repaying her somehow, even if it was just a small gesture. After some back and forth, he convinced her to accept a meal once they were both strong enough to leave the alley. Reluctantly, Maya agreed, though she didn't expect much from the offer. Strangers rarely kept their promises in her experience, and she had learned not to rely on anyone but herself. Over the next few days, they stayed together in the alcove, waiting for Henry to regain his strength. During that time, they talked a lot. At first, their conversations were simple. Henry asked about Maya's life, and she gave vague answers, careful not to reveal too much. But as the hours passed, she began to open up, sharing bits and pieces of her story. She told him about growing up in foster homes, about the constant moving and the loneliness that followed her everywhere she went. She spoke about her parents, who had died in a car accident when she was 6, and how she barely remembered their faces anymore. And she admitted, almost reluctantly, that she had spent most of her adult life searching for something she couldn't quite name, a sense of belonging, maybe, or a place where she truly fit in. Henry listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally to show he understood. When she finished, he didn't offer platitudes or empty reassurances. Instead, he shared his own story. He told her about his career as an engineer, working for one of the largest tech corporations in the world. He described the long hours, the pressure to innovate, and the toll it took on his personal life. He confessed that his work had driven a wedge between him and his family, particularly his wife and daughter. They had argued constantly, with his wife accusing him of prioritizing his job over them. Eventually, the strain became too much, and they divorced. His daughter, Emily, moved away with her mother, and though he tried to stay in touch, their relationship grew distant over time. "I should have done things differently," Henry said, his voice heavy with regret. "I thought my work would bring us closer. It was supposed to make our lives easier, better, but instead, it pushed them away." Maya nodded, understanding the weight of his words. She had never known her parents well enough to miss them, but she knew what it was like to feel abandoned. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the silence stretching between them like an unspoken bond. As the days went by, their connection deepened. Henry noticed how resourceful Maya was, how she managed to scavenge food and supplies despite having so little. In turn, Maya admired Henry's resilience, the way he refused to give up even when his body betrayed him. They weren't alike in many ways. He was older, wiser, and far more cautious, but they shared a mutual respect that transcended age and circumstance. One evening, as they sat side by side under the dim light of a nearby street lamp, Henry made a surprising confession. "You remind me of my daughter," he said softly. "She was kind like you, always looking out for others, even when it wasn't easy." Maya glanced at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "What happened to her?" she asked cautiously. Henry hesitated, his expression clouding with sadness. "She passed away years ago, car accident, like your parents. I haven't been the same since." The revelation hit Maya harder than she expected. She had assumed Henry's loneliness stemmed from old age or estrangement, but losing a child was a pain she couldn't begin to comprehend. Without thinking, she reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry," she said simply. Henry smiled faintly, touched by her gesture. "Thank you, but enough about me. Tell me more about you. What do you dream about, Maya?" "What keeps you going?" The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her that before, not genuinely, anyway. Most people only cared about surface-level details, the kind of information you could share in passing without revealing too much of yourself. But Henry's curiosity felt genuine, like he truly wanted to know her. "I guess," Maya started, slowly, choosing her words carefully. "I dream about having a family, not the kind you're born into, but the kind you choose. People who care about you, who stick around no matter what. I've never had that, and sometimes I wonder if I ever will." Henry studied her face, seeing the vulnerability she tried so hard to hide. "You deserve that, Maya. Everyone does." His words lingered in the air, filling the space between them with a warmth neither of them had felt in a long time. For Maya, it was a reminder of the hope she had buried deep inside herself, the hope that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she thought. And for Henry, it was a chance to make amends for the mistakes of his past, to create a new kind of family with someone who needed it as much as he did. By the time they decided to leave the alley, the storm had cleared completely, leaving behind a crisp, cool morning. The city buzzed with activity, its streets bustling with people rushing to their destinations. Maya and Henry blended into the crowd, two strangers bound together by circumstances neither of them could have predicted. As they walked, Henry kept glancing at Maya, a thoughtful look on his face. "What is it?" she asked finally, noticing his gaze. "Nothing," he replied with a smile. "Just thinking about how lucky I am to have met you." Maya rolled her eyes, though a small smile tugged at her lips. "Don't get all mushy on me, old man." Henry chuckled, the sound warm and genuine. "Fair enough. But seriously, Maya, you've given me a second chance, and I don't intend to waste it." Though she didn't say it aloud, Maya felt the same way. For the first time in years, she felt like she had a purpose beyond surviving day to day. Helping Henry had awakened something inside her, a spark of hope she hadn't realized still existed. Whether it would lead to something meaningful or fizzle out like so many other dreams remained to be seen. But for now, she was content to take it one step at a time, alongside the man who had unexpectedly become her friend.